Hello, welcome to Reloved Guitars again. This is Sam and this is Morris. He's for a change, he's here. And today, now, right here and right now, we have the second of Daniel's 3 guitars that came into Reloved Guitars today. And this little thingy is a Carvin HH, no it's an H, well I don't know what it's, Carvin. It's a single pickup. I thought it was going to be 2 when I first heard of it, but anyway, it's a Carvin designed by Mr. Allan Holdsworth. Get your strap on carefully and properly. So what do we have? Well, we have a headless travel guitar type of thing, but it's a mean looking beast. It's got 2 strap buttons, kind of makes it stand up nicely. It's got one of these inset tuner thingies, and it works on double-ended strings, which these things don't have to. They can be converted to work on the single-end ones. They save a lot of money. And it's got a single pickup, which is another Allan Holdsworth pickup, and it's got a volume and a tone button in a Strat style, and it's 24 frets, and it's a Strat scale length. Very flat radius. It's probably something like a 16. I haven't measured it yet. And but anyway, so this is the second of 3, and if you followed the first one or listened to or watched the first one, it's an interesting scenario because all 3 guitars have been through to visit another luthier somewhere in London, I suppose, and have come back in such a way that Daniel's not particularly happy with how they feel. And it's one of the things that I won't go into too much detail because I did on the other video, but it's a very, very difficult thing to say because how guitars play and feel is subjective anyway. But something about it isn't right for him, and as soon as that you get it back from someone and it doesn't feel quite right, then you kind of can get obsessed by it, or it can kind of dominate the whole experience of the guitar. Now the first guitar I did just now was the vintage Ibanez, and one of the things that I found out pretty quickly with that one is that although the previous luthier had claimed to have dressed the frets, what he may not have done within that is leveled them, with the result that there were some high frets particularly choking or buzzing off on the low E and the A. So I was able to address that with my precision fret leveling approach and actually cleared that up so it plays really nicely. So this one is a little bit different, very different in all kinds of ways as a headless guitar. It's different also because from an immediate technical standpoint, and from a luthier standpoint, I don't never call myself a luthier, but from a tech guitar fixer standpoint, this is a tricky thing because two reasons. First of all, because to my hands immediately, it feels initially okay. Secondly, it's been through somebody else's hands and come back, and the customer can't live with it. Now, what about it he can't live with is quite difficult to articulate, and we had some sort of conversations about it earlier on, and it was very difficult to say what it was that he didn't like. So in a way, I'm under, from a tech perspective, it's a really interesting challenge because you can't definitively say what's not right. It's not a guitar I've owned myself, so I can't fill in the gaps and say this is how it was before I took it to a certain person, and then now this is what they've done and this is how I don't like it. So I only have what I find here in front of me, and so I have to go very carefully with this and sort of work out what it could be. Now of course there are some things just as sort of plain, straightforward. I'm frightened of letting go of this in case it falls off the strap. Into straightforward detective work, what do we know about this? Well, it's actually a very lightweight body. It's quite nicely balanced in that it's you don't have to have a lot of weight here to balance a neck, a headless neck. no pickup, no tuners and no headstop. But this is actually quite lightweight, so you could play this thing all day long without any exhaustion. Single pickup, not a lot of tonal variety, but it's a nice quality pickup, and it has a nice tone to it. Again, back into the land of subjective. Remarkable, unremarkable. I think it's more of a remarkable thing. I think it's got, I couldn't even describe to you, I couldn't find the subjective language to tell you why I like it. I think it's got some, I think it feels fairly high output to me. I bet it drives this rectifier sort of setting, modelling like a mad thing on full tilt. Subjective. How do you explain why you like it? I don't know. I just like it. Okay, so I do like it. It feels like it's a quality. It sounds like it's a quality pickup. It could be accused of being almost a fraction too sharp. I've had to turn the treble down. This is with the treble open, so something you'd want to use the treble control or the tone control. But there you go. That's what it's for. Okay, so nice. You know. It's got a sort of what looks like an ebony board, and it's got, as I say, the sort of ball either end deal, and they slot into their little trays here, and then you tune them backwards. And it's got the little kind of rocker arrangement, so you can tilt up and down and set the action the way you want. And this is interesting. So what can I find about this that doesn't work for me? Well, not a lot so far. But I do notice, I don't know if you can hear it, there's some familiar pinging, and what you get with a 0 fret, which is the way the nut works on this, it uses a 0 fret, which is a great way of setting a by default low first fret action. The only downside of the 0 fret is it wears really quickly because the strings are permanently in contact with it. So this one has already started notching slightly, and you can see the wear on top of the fret, and actually it's already a notch, and I could say I can make noises if I'm being unkind. Well, I could anyway. But it's not a game threatener, you know. It doesn't stop you playing it. So what I'm looking at here is we've got basically a guitar that was originally started out life with a tremolo, and the interesting thing here, and this partly could be somewhere where some of this difficulty for Daniel started, is that he had it converted. He bought a, what's this called? I can't remember what it's called. A J Custom bridge. In fact, I ought to research this because this would be a better bridge for my headless, depending on the price. But he bought this J Custom bridge, put it on, removed the tremolo, and to place it on it had to be shimmed, and rather than have a custom shim made, it's a wooden shim that's gone under here. And to some degree Daniel was wondering, I think he got it back, it didn't feel like the right guitar to him, and I think part of the thing in his head has been saying it might be something to do with this shim not being some, you know, an official metal one, or and in fact somebody he wrote to somebody at J Custom, I think it was J Custom, or maybe it was the guitar manufacturer, I can't remember, one of the two, that basically said this would not work with this this guitar. And actually the truth about these things, if you think about it, is that providing the scale length is correct, there is no reason why that bridge will not work with that guitar. I mean, yes, you might have to shim it up or down or sink it wherever it has to go, because you don't have any shimming room on the neck because it's a set neck. But apart from that, there's no reason why. There's no intrinsic reason why. And you have to kind of just think simply about these things. Yes, it's a high-tech little unit made by a specialist designer, musician, whatever. But the point is, it's a bridge, it's a nut, it's some frets of a certain playing length, which come together at a certain rate, mathematical rate, and there should be some some relief in the neck, and then there's a pickup. So rocket science it's not. So there isn't an intrinsic reason why putting a hardtail bridge on this would make this not play. There would be if you sank it too far into the body and the strings hit the you'd have to build it up with a shim, which is clearly what's happened. If you went too high, then you'd be in trouble, or if the unit fitted too high because you couldn't raise this either, so you'd have to cut down the body or cut down the unit itself. But as it stands, this thing is sitting in what appears to be a pretty good position. You've got good clear access to the tuners. There presumably is a bit of up and down movement available in these saddles here. And the question for me still is, what is it that any luthier could do to change or improve the way this plays? And that's the real crux of this, because there's nothing you can adjust on the nut. We could potentially clean that nut up, dress it a tiny bit. That would change the action by a fraction. That's one of the downsides of the 0 fret. If you dress or remove the grooves on the nut, you will amend the first fret action. There may be, I mean, it's pretty well set actually, so you probably wouldn't want to do that. But that's your catch with the 0 fret. This is maybe not that well played at the moment. Give this maybe another year of hard playing, maybe even gigging, and you'd need to either replace or address. But in this case, looking at the gap, you'd probably need to replace this fret altogether. I'm not even sure if it's the same size or bigger. I think the Hohner one was bigger. I'm not sure if this one is actually bigger. It looks a little taller. So it's all kind of swings and roundabouts for the 0 fret. You pay your money and you get a bit of luthier hassle. But right now, let's assume that it plays okay with the tiniest bit of pinging. As it happens, Daniel's not a bender. So the pinging only really happens when you bend it. There's no other detrimental effects. I wouldn't be taking this off and messing with that for love or money right now, unless it was going ting and he was somebody who bent notes all the time. So given this is as stock and there's nothing you can do to amend it other than put a taller 0 fret in, if you can find one, if you want a higher first fret action, or skim it down, file it down if you want a lower action and dress it down. But frankly, there's nothing we can really do. There's no major improvement you can do on there, which leaves us really with two things, and that is the bridge action, three things: the bridge action and the neck relief. And complicating that or not are the conditions of the frets underneath. Now, judging by this morning's earlier on's go at the Ibanez, a guitar that was supposed to have had its frets dressed, although I wasn't clear whether it was dressed or levelled, because some luthiers call dressing just a matter of tidying them up, getting rid of grooves, maybe not really pursuing a level, but they weren't level. Now this may be the case here, and we can find that out shortly. But as I say, we've got the neck relief that we can alter to change how the guitar feels, and basically we've got the action here and the intonation here that we can amend and change to improve things. And then we can, if we want to take the action down a bit, we can lower the frets, or level the frets I should say. But this is the interesting part. Beyond that, there are so few things involved here that there is nothing else that can really change the way this guitar plays. And that then comes back to the customer, and it's really difficult for somebody to say what could have changed that makes it so that you don't like it, because there are so few things to be changed actually. It's a bag of finite things. Now as it stands, pretty much every note on this thing seems to, so far, Now, describing this, Daniel said that it felt like it had lost its resonance, and he used the word dead several times. Now, to be honest, I'm not... a little bit of... It's a little bit... There's some up there. So there's a few dead notes around there, or pretty crappy notes around there, and a few down here on the low A, the A and the low E, like on the Ibanez. I think, I'm not sure if Daniel said this one was a refret as well, or whether it was the Hohner Headless. I suspect it would be the Hohner Headless. This is, I don't know, but anyway, the point is, let's have a look what we've currently got in the way of playing action on this thing. We'll see. Let's get my other specs out. I'm so nervous about this strap. It's got a SG style button on the back. I guess somebody figured that's the best place for it. So let's have a look. So on the action here we've got, yeah, you see we're on all these cases we're running in at about 1.5, but this one's higher. That's interesting. So we've got about 1.75 on the low E, which is a lot higher than I would expect. So 1.75 and 1.5. So that's a bit unusual. High E 1.75, low E 1.5. So first of all, that would be something I'd want to reset. Now, looking at the setting of this, we have a bit of a bulge up at the B department, and again, what have we got there? Okay, 1.6, 1.6, 1.6, 1.4-ish, 1.5, 1.4. So it is a little higher here than it is down there, which a guitar like this, no reason why it shouldn't go, I wouldn't think this shouldn't go down to 1.5 to 1. But again, we don't, we'll get a bit of change of feel over on this side, which of course is where Daniel will play most of his, well, he won't play all of his notes, but you know, play a lot of the notes on the treble strings. So even though this end feels a bit like kind of where I would have it almost, this end is a bit higher, and I think we can improve that end just by taking the action down, and then if we need to level the frets underneath to make it comply, that's the whole game. The next thing I want to see is what the neck relief is like on this, and Morris has been very good just sitting there. So checking the neck relief, having just a quick feel. Very low. There's a little bit, and where are we? In the middle, roughly. Tiny amount. But again, on a guitar like this, you wouldn't be shocked to find such a low amount. It's sort of, it should be a precise little player, and I think it'll be again coming in at about perhaps a little under 2, maybe more like 1.15. Again, very difficult to see actually. I think we can do without the plug-in thing for a minute. You know it plays. Let's just put it up on here in Morris's face. Okay, so very, very hard. I don't know how anyone ever measures this really. Whether you can actually see the damn string moving or not. And that goes in. So 0.2, so that's not so bad. There's 0.2. Something around 0.2. So again, very little, but not so much as not as low to cause any problems. I'd say it's about almost spot on 0.2 again, which is a fairly decent start point that I would only really want to change if something else wasn't playing right or was demonstrably not right. So, okay, to begin with, we're going to need to make an adjustment to this action now. And I'm going to need to fiddle a little with this in order to do it. One of the things that I was going to do, or I'd like to do, after setting this action and seeing what we've got, later on, once if we do need to do fret leveling, then after the fret leveling, I want to have a look under here and just see how it strikes me. I'm sure the guy would have done a good job under here, and the wood will be solid and it will be forming a decent base for this thing. Could be wrong, but I don't see right. I mean, in many ways that would be one of the easier tasks, to make sure this is bolted or anchored nicely and firmly. And as I was explaining to Daniel, the important thing about this is that this is solidly fixed to there, so that the whole thing is a kind of solid unit. I think maybe back of Daniel's mind might be, is this thing lost some sort of resonance or sustain because it's not attached to a metal thing? And I'm not. We could get a long running argument kicked off about that. I'm not entirely sure that would be the case. I mean, in truth, what you want is the string to vibrate without moving any parts, and to do that, mostly you want it going over a fixed, firm footing. So long as that footing's firm and it doesn't kind of shoot, what you don't want is loads of energy from the string shedding under here into stuff here that moves, or into loose bits under there that moves. But really, you want that to be as inert as possible. Now, somebody might argue that this, if it's sitting on top of wood, could it make the wood particles vibrate? Well, why would they vibrate more than metal ones? I don't know. It gets a bit highly technical at that point. So what we've got is this this bridge, and I can't remember offhand how this works. Sorry, Morris. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the pressure or the tension off this string, and I'm going to just do a little bit of fiddling with this. Now, the other thing that's happening here is that Daniel wants to go to, it's currently got 10s on it possibly, and Daniel wants to go to 8s, and that's a pretty big shift. Let's have a look at this thing. How do these things move? There was I can't remember which one holds it down. These are kind of different. Let's pull that one up and see what happens. Is that one the moving one? Yeah. I think one of them stops it moving, and one of them, I think, rocks backwards, upwards or downwards. I've lost my bright lights for a minute. Let's have some back. Okay, so let's have a look. When this one, we tweak this one, what's happening? Is it going down? Is it coming up? That's coming out, and that allows me to go down. Okay, so none of this actually reacts. It's so stiff, none of it actually kind of just reacts to the string unless it's under massive pressure. So you can see that we can now drive this up, but to measure its here comes the rain. Measure its action, I need to put it under some tension. Now, some people will get really hot under the collar about all this, and they go, well, if you turn that while it's under tension, you'll grind away the base plate. Well, it's the bottom of a grub screw. Do you really care? Not that much. Is it going to drill a hole in it? No. It's just going to make a mark like it does on a Stratocaster tremolo block. You can always see the little marks. So I'm going to leave these under tension for a minute, and I'm going to take them down. But again, you'll see that we need to push them. And you push them down and then bring them back up. So I'm going to go for a dead flat 1 on this. I'm not going to worry about the intonation for now. Just going to go for a 1 mil and see what we get. And if we start getting massive chokes and stuff, then we'll know the challenge we've got, or we'll get a sense of why it was raised up before. I'm a little concerned about the idea of 8s on this. Because 8s will be quite light. Now we are in the region of some slight choking, but that's okay. We can take care of that with our super duper, super specialist careful fret leveling system. Now this one is down on its haunches, but probably could do with a little bit more of a drop. Okay, so we're going to come fractionally above 1 on this one, so we do want a bit of a gradient up to 1.5. That's on 1 there, so a tweak more than 1. Yeah, 1.1, why not? Okay, it's sitting at 1.5, this third one, so I'm going to slack this off, push it down, work back upwards, a tiny fraction higher. We want 1.25-ish around about now. It's close. So you see, as we get down to this low action, nice rain. I'm glad I released the the vole back into the wild earlier while it was still sunny. Yeah, as we come down to this low action, this is going to be a bit lower again. We are starting to get the notes are starting to get less defined, and they're not as nice as they could be. Okay, we are sitting halfway. That's about 1.25 or 1.3. That's good. This one, so it's anything a fraction low, so bring that up. And then this one sitting at a good spot. Okay. Okay, now if we go ahead and do any levelling work, this action with this gauge of strings, all it means is when we put a lighter gauge on, we're going to need to readjust the truss rod, but the relative levelness will still be set in the strings. Maybe a slight difference. Is this 10s? Because ideally I would like to have been able to do this with lighter gauge strings on it, but I wish I could work out a comparative tension system which I could re-slack them by poundage, but I haven't got such a way of working that out. Let's just see what we've got. And, here we got 9.5, 11, 16.5, 24, 32, 41. That's interesting. This is an unusual set. So it's not 10s, it's 9s. Which is okay, so it's not such a big step down to the 8s that we've got kicking over here. There we go. Double ball system. 8 11s right to 38. So this is a lighter set. So let's see, what have we got now? Okay, so we've lowered the action first of all. Again, we're finding that it's the edges of these frets that are not great. So I'm going to prepare to do the standard thing, and I sound like apologetic about this, and I suppose I really ought to say, in a way, what I'm preparing to do is all that can be done with this system, or with a guitar, which is to level the frets. Now, what I can't do in this system is level the 0 fret, and I don't want to do that anyway, because, like I said, it's going to reduce. It would reduce the differential between that fret and the next one, which would decrease the action. Have a look at the feel of these things. What's happened to them before? Do they show much sign of leveling of any kind? Now this guitar has, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to push that back under there so it doesn't come out. The ball ends sit under a little tray here, which is quite cute, sit in little trays. There's a Chinese version of this that I'm tempted to buy, and it always, so far, it always comes with a tremolo unit fitted. Oh blimey, yeah, these are so destructive. I'm going to take some close-up pictures here, because you wouldn't believe the amount of wear that you get under here for such a short lifespan so far, really. Can I get? Let's see if I can get a zoom up on this, and then I'll show you in the close-up. Oh, that's just not. That's not funny, is it? Really. So we're seeing a split in the board there. Split in the fingerboard. There's a white line that shows up really strongly in there, but it's interesting. Anyway, what I'm going to do is, as I said, I'm going to approach it with the intention of making these frets play. Now, my feeling about this 0 fret on a guitar like this is if you had to, if it was the grooving was affecting play badly, then I would recommend probably it'd be more sense to replace it with a known gauge than to try and dress it. The thing about replacing it is at least you kind of keep a familiar first fret action. If you were to dress it down, let's see, do that and wipe it off. If you were to dress it down, you find yourself with just a different action to deal with, which is it would change, and then you'd replace it the next time and the action would go up again, and then you'd dress it down, the action would go down again. Sorry, Morris. Okay, so yeah, so basically I'm going to do with this guitar what I can do with guitars, and like I said, there isn't a terrible lot other than that to be done with guitars. So I'm thinking of trying out what the Chinese equivalent of this. Let's just get this thing out of the way because that's moved forward. Is that the one? Yeah. No, it's not the one. This one. Yeah, I'm thinking of trying out the Chinese equivalent of this, which, like I said, comes as a tremolo unit, which can be modified, and I think it's a bit more robust than the one I've used so far for my other guitars. But I still like the I like the principle of it. Okay, so what I want to do is just get a note and tune this back up. Sorry, Morris. Okay, I'll do it one more time, but it's the actual strict tone tuning, pitch tuning isn't important here. Just we want it under playing pressure, playing tension. Okay, so there we have the guitar with its action set nice and low, where it should be able to go on a guitar like this, frankly. From 1.5 down to 1, it's got about 0.2 millimeters of relief in the neck. That will reduce slightly when we change the strings, but we can compensate if we want to return it to the 0.2. First fret is the 0 fret, and we're going to look at leveling these other ones here. So just going to go into it and do it, because that's all there is to it. Screw it, let's do it. Who said that? Richard Branson, wasn't it? Anyway, so I'm going to got my stiff U channel, which worked well on the last one, so I'm going to reuse that, and let's just go. So like I said, we can always be tempted to get sort of overwhelmed by the high-tech things, or even the expensive guitars, before you know it, people can be talking as if there's special treatment. You've got to just remember there's a basic geometry here which I drew up in the last video, and the basic geometry is bridge, nut, frets more or less uneven, strings, neck relief. There's only a few things in this deal, and you just have to get those various things right in relation to each other. Now, of course, they're interdependent, and you will if you adjust one, you will change what's going on with the other ones, which is kind of obvious. But so this beam is almost straight, or actually it's kind of defaults at the very low amount of relief that we've got on this neck. Now this one's a little bit trickier because I can't move this out of the way here, so I'm going to move it out of the way down here. I've forgotten about the 0 fret game. What I'll need to do is get me a bit of, I know where I put it, get me a little bit of green garden wire. Where did I put it, Morris? Can you help me? Please? Garden wire. It's going to be the thing I can't find for hours now. And the reason I need it is because I can use it to just pull the string out of the way. So would you believe it, I can't find it. There is something of the nature of that out here, and I could probably maybe ever use this, or I may not actually. I may have to revert to a bit of string. This is most annoying. I forgot that's the other slight downside of the 0 fret arrangement, is I've got to pull this string out of the way. With a nut you can just drop the thing off, drop the string off and get on with it, but here we have to kind of go into a little game of pulling the string off to one side. We only need to get as far as there, so we just have to get it sort of out of the way around this point here. So I can do it by hand and hold it. Okay, so here we go, like before. We place this on here, our up friend. Now this is a 24 fret arrangement, so we need to kind of use a bit more backwards and forwardsing to get to either end of it. It's not quite that easy. Now, I can tell you straight away, this is interesting, like the last one, we're getting. Now, I think if you watch the last one, you remember me saying if it cuts only in the middle, it's possibly this is too curved. If it cuts only at the ends, it's possible the bar's too flat. If it cuts kind of middle and end, then it's pretty much right. And it's cutting middle and end, or if it cuts all the way across, it's right. And what I'm noticing straight away is that we've got a really clear high spot here and here. We've got low one here, higher ones here, not touched, not touched, not touched, touched tiny bit, not, and then a cluster of about 5 here that are cutting. So there's clearly uneven frets in this deal, like before. Okay, so I'm just going to pull this out of the way again, just give me a room to manoeuvre. It's what we'd expect, there are uneven frets. What I'm kind of was interested in before is how the previous person who worked on this guitar actually, what they did to the frets, because I think Daniel was under the impression they levelled them, but they may have leveled them, but not excuse me, not enough to get down to the kind of actions we're talking about. Very nearly there, but I don't know how well you can see this, but you can, maybe you can see. You can see that we've got nothing there, cut, lot of cut, nothing. So just look at the difference. There's 2 here that are cutting, and this one is below the level of these. So these are clearly high, and the one in the middle is low, but the low one makes the next one even higher, if you get what I mean. And then we've got a cluster here that are quite low, and then we've got a few here that are high. So it's definitely something uneven. Now, I said in the previous video, and I hold to it on this one, I'm not aiming to be critical of the other luthiers' work or anything. I'm not saying they didn't do a great job of whatever they were doing with the frets. It may be that the difference in level that you're seeing here, that this is throwing up, inverted commas, it may well be that you're seeing the difference between this method and a more general method that I know a lot of luthiers use, which is the passive fret level method, where you set the neck dead flat and then you use a flat beam and you just keep going until you've got no rocking, your fret rocker doesn't click between as you go over sets of 3, and of course you do it with the strings off. But as you may have heard in the last video, and you probably know, I do it with the strings on because I want the effects of compression to be at play in the neck as I level the frets. You can see from this, it's cutting the metal, but it's making the notes on this E string now so look, listen to the difference between the highest note on the B string and the E. There's a qualitative difference. Now I'm going to do the same, use the same profile for the next track, as I call it, the B track. Sorry, I've had a cold for a couple of weeks and it's trying to come back a bit. So I spread the strings down here and I'll work into the B track now with the same, basically the same calibration on the banana, as I call it, or the fret leveling tool. Now the idea now is, if you can sort of remember how that last note on the B string sounded a minute ago, let's see if I can compare it in a minute to what it will sound like now. So again, looking at this, we've got cutting here, none there, cutting here, 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 lots, a little bit, quite a lot, not much, none, none, some, a bit, quite a lot. So there's definitely clusters of uneven frets on this, here and here basically. It's showing up. You can see it showing up. You'll see the dust building up as we do it. Getting there, you see that? That's almost right. I think that is right. I'm not going to do any more on that. So straight away we've cleaned up those. I'm hoping that this is the difference in playability that Daniel's looking for, and I can't be sure of that, but then again, like I said before, I can only do what I know can be done, so it's kind of limited by that, and so I can't feel bad about that. I just get on and do it and get the best action out of it I can possibly get. Okay, so again, this is very flat. We're almost at the limit of adjustment on this thing. So now I'm going to push the G string to one side. No comments, gentlemen. And I'm going to do the same at this end to give me just a bit of room to work. And then again, with just gravity to help. And just moving a little bit across as we do it, just to make sure we don't kind of flatten it in one spot. We're moving around a bit. And again, sort of looking from a few angles at what we've got. Cutting, that's good. Gap, low spots here and a bit lower here, so the problem is still expanding or extending into this area here. Not so bad as we come into the middle of the fingerboard, or the middle of the radius on here. But again, it's just a matter of we do it. It's a very accurate action at the moment. We're barely over 1mm down here, which is fantastic really. So I'm going to do a tiny touch more on this G, and I'll do it this way so I can pull the string. Yeah, just a fraction more. One of the things I've learned over the time, and it was actually kind of accentuated to me for me by somebody who bought my ebook, which details how I do this, which is not that not simple. It's not that complicated. But the person rang me after starting the setup, and emailed me saying they'd got so far and they stopped because they were really nervous about how much the material the technique was cutting. Yay. And so I was able to sort of talk them through it, and I think we phoned actually. And one of the things that struck me that hadn't kind of hit home to me before is that, because I've done it so many times, if you're doing this for the first time, you really can get freaked out by the amount that it appears to be cutting the frets. And if you haven't done it before, there's every reason why you're going to want to sort of stop and pull out. And so this person kind of sensibly got in touch and said, is it right that I should be cutting this much, or I'm really nervous, can I? And actually, that's right, sorry, I forgot, he brought it down, that's right. And I was able to bring him out to the workshop and invited him to kind of stay with me while I kind of went through the whole process again from scratch, just so he could see where he'd done it right, and also so he could kind of make sense of the point where I went past what he'd done, and he could see what, get a sense of what it was that had stopped him, his kind of uncertainty. And it was really useful experience actually, and I think he got a lot out of learning to have a bit more confidence in it. It's brilliant, it's perfect. Yeah, he got a bit more confidence out of it, and I got to appreciate how that I probably hadn't bigged that thing up enough in what I'd written. I hadn't really made a big enough impression about, in saying, look, it's likely that you're going to get this far and then feel very nervous about what it looks like, and sort of to reassure people that it's fine. There's a lot of fret material under there, and over time you do get to know when there isn't, and it isn't usually in the situation with a guitar like this. It's often an old, find it on an old Squire or an old Ibanez or something, something vintage. You suddenly realise, you'll see from the beginning that you're working with very low frets, and almost anything you do is going to be marginal from that point. So it always, I guess the reassurance I was giving this guy is that it always looks worse than it is, and to be honest, you actually have a lot more fret material to work with than you think. Okay, so this one is showing up cutting well here and here and here and here and here and here and lots here, still cutting here, stops here. Now we've got a sort of flatter or hollowed out, a bit lower spot. But I'm not surprised, it kind of confirms or fits in with everything I know. Still a bit to go there. Right. So this is the bit where you've got to be courageous. You say, okay, first of all, I have to believe that I can get these notes sounding clean. Secondly, I have to acknowledge that to get that, I'm going to have to keep going with this. And of course, my sort of reality check on this is, have I got the fret metal to do it, or am I going to run into trouble? And if it's taking off loads of fret metal, do I want it that bad? Versus the cost in fret metal that you're taking off. And actually, like I said, this looks bad as you're doing it. It always looks worse than it is. And then once you've dressed it all up and put the time into polishing these frets back up, the payoff is immense. Almost good. Do you hear how everything's cleaned up there except this just hasn't quite got the sustain or the resonance. Sorry if it's the wrong language, but you know what I mean. It hasn't got the dynamics of the other notes. So I'm just going to concentrate on this end, if I may, just for a second. And in this way now, I'm actually will forgive myself for putting a little bit of, I wouldn't say excess pressure, but I'm thinking about this end of it and focusing on this end of it, just want to free up that last little bit. Okay. And again, with this one, like the previous guitar, I'm going to take a picture of the dust pattern afterwards, just to remind myself. That's it, we got there. What's great about this is if you know, fingers crossed, if what I'm doing here makes enough difference to Daniel that this becomes the way he wants to play it, then what it will demonstrate isn't really about whether, you know, this technique is more, it may well demonstrate that this is a little bit more accurate, or maybe I should say it is that bit more accurate than the other method of fret leveling, you know, such that it frees up those last notes which the other method isn't doing or hasn't done. So it may prove that, but perhaps the more interesting thing from where I stand is that it shows what a huge difference to perception and feel for a customer, what a huge difference a relatively small adjustment like this makes. You know, because in a sense what you'll see is if this I can't prejudge this because I don't know, I'm hoping this is going to make the difference for Daniel, but if it does, you'll be able to sort of look at this and say, whatever I do here and the precision with which it's done, sorry, this is just rattling around a bit, I don't want that happening, the precision of this and the difference it makes, the slight difference it makes to the precision of the fret leveling, actually translates into I want to play this guitar versus I can't be bothered to get it down off the shelf or open it, get it out of the case. And to me that's the most incredible thing of all, is when if you can see that's the consequence or the outcome of this. That's the amazing bit. Okay, so I kind of expect to have to do a bit more on this low E because it was probably the worst of the lot. All out of tune, but now these tall frets, you can see how susceptible they are to detuning when you press too hard. Little tiny bit there. Getting there. Little cluster of down there. So I'm encouraged by this. I have to admit, when I started doing both these three guitars, I wasn't sure if I was going to get beyond a certain point with these and get them anywhere near towards being something that Daniel wanted to play, because as I said, I know the sort of limits of what's possible, and I suppose my assumption was that I couldn't quite be sure that a previous luthier hadn't got to that place with this. It's not rocket science, but then again I'm perhaps underestimating the precision of this technique and why it's such a good technique to use, because if you think about it, the guy doing this before, doing it with the neck passively flattened and a beam, he might be using a fret rocker, but then you put it under tension and the frets change position from where they were when the neck was passively flat. You can see what I'm doing is I'm leveling until it plays. Now this is interesting. At the point at which, if you press it a bit too hard, it raises it above the next fret. If you just fret it, it runs the risk of, if you only fret it just hard enough to sound the note, you get a tiny bit of hit or buzz. certainly down on these. So I'm just going to do one more and focus on this end, because I want it, ideally I want it to play with the lightest touch, because that's what Daniel plays with, and I don't want him to have to press hard to get rid of that last bit of buzz. So I'm really going to focus down on this part of the neck now. Again, you can see I'm holding it there and I'm kind of looking at it, even though it's still doing a bit of leveling down here. I'm just telling this area here that I want it to behave itself and I want it to play the way I want it to play. Okay, and now that looks like a lot of leveling, and in a sense it is. It's not a gentle tweak, but it's doing what has to be done to make this play cleanly. There you go, as light as I can make it. So there we have it. Nerve-wracking for me, but challenging, and I like it to be that way. I'm really glad that Daniel brought me these, because it has kind of put me on double thinking brain, on, you know, engaged brain alert. You can see the dust pattern, and you can see the flattening, you know, some of the flattening going on. And of course now I need to reprofile these and get them into a nice playing condition again, which will take time to crown them, or to reprofile them with the fret crowning tool, and then I'll need to sand them all out and protect all the fingerboard and everything. What I will do is I'll take some pictures just to show kind of how much, and there are a couple of spots, by the time we finished we lose track of them, but there are a couple of spots in here that are quite low. So we've got a lot of leveling here, low spots round about there, and then quite a lot of leveling on this side. So it's quite a, you never get a very good view of it in the lights, that's the thing. It's almost the best bet is to get that sort of long view to see the dust, and get a kind of sense of where it's cut from where the majority of the dust falls. And in this case it's two real clusters actually, and it's not just because they're close together. We've got a cluster at the end here. This section here around the 12th fret aren't so bad at all, and then we've got a fairly big section which oh sorry, you're not even looking at it. Would you look at it? So you can't kind of, I'm going to draw it. It's just to get different patterns. So looking at it on its side like that, you kind of see the length of the neck, and what you can see by following the dust patterns is you can say, well, there's the nut and there's the last fret, and what we've got here is we've got a kind of an area like that that's been bad, and then we've got an area like that that's been pretty bad too, judging by the dust that's built up. In fact, that's probably more like that. So it gives you a sense that there's a lot of uneven stuff in there and in there. The other stuff's a bit as well, but what it's really telling you is if there's a free area, the lower frets kind of live in there, and yeah, a bit around there actually. And that's about it, and the rest is worked on. So it's quite interesting, and I suppose when you think about the experience of it, just like on the Ibanez, got most of the choking was experienced playing notes along here on the low E and the A, and you know, this wasn't so bad at all. Even when we lowered it, you could still kind of play it. So that's that bit of work done, and as I said, there's not a lot else that really can be done with this other than now to put it back into a nice playing condition. What time have we got here? Hey, it's nearly time for any questions, so probably just coincides perfectly with going off camera. What I'm going to do is, at this point now, I'll tell you and then I'll go away. I'm going to take the strings off, I'm going to re-crown the frets with this, and then while that's off, and before I do polishing, I'm going to take this bridge off and just assess underneath it to make sure that it's in, there's nothing wrong with it. Now the thing about this, these strings is, I think they've got to be, yeah, they have to be a fixed length, don't they? So you really basically can only and then they come off the little hook. Come on, in you go. Yeah, you don't really have a lot of choice. They're a fixed length and they drop into the tray, and then you've got as much distance as you got to pull them in. I've never quite understood how that works without running out of, you know, if the strings stretch a bit more, do you end up, if you run out of pull distance, how do you ever get them to pitch? But I guess it never seems to happen, so I may be over worrying that. They come off the little barrels after a while, so you have to make sure they go back on when you've got all the strings out and you've done what you're doing. Okay, so simple little unit actually, and this one, these kind of just sit there by virtue of this little rubber band, which you can pull them out from under, which is it's very neat. I do like how convenient that is. So here's a set of strings which aren't that bad, but they are a fixed length. They're no good to me for anything, but they might make nice cheese wires or something. But they aren't such bad condition, so I could keep them for example, if the 8s just didn't work on this, we could go back to these. So I'll just put them out of the light for a moment. Okay, so this needs a clean down or a brush down. Get some of this dust out of the way first. It's always going to get dusty. There is this white line on the board here. I don't know what that is, but and now you know you can. Well, you won't be able to see, but there is clearly evidence of the slight pitting on the 0 fret. Okay, so now we have, to get at this, I need to make sure these are wound back in for a minute because I can't get to the fixing screws in any other way. So, on you go, sunshine. Obviously I need to wind those out later when I can put strings back on. It's a nice little system. I wonder, I'm going to have to ask how much it costs, because I wouldn't mind using something of this quality on mine rather than the Chinese things. They weren't bad for starting out and they've done the job quite well. But excuse me, this is a better system without a doubt. I'm not too keen on the double ball ends. I'd much rather have the converter unit on the end here, so you can do away with the need for expensive strings. Okay, so we've got this, we can see the block here. We've got the wooden block, nice hard wood block gone into there. That's where the tremolo spring unit would sit on the normal bridge. So we've got a block of wood there, another block there, and this is sitting on top of it. I'm just in a way, for as much for Daniel's peace of mind as anything else, I'm just going to lift up these units if I can and just gently, if they move, I'm going to end up hurting my finger. There you go. They do move, just like that. Brilliant. It's incredible. So there's your, I remember that from the last time. They don't actually do anything, they just kind of sit in place, don't they? Yeah, they're not even fixed on anything. So the front and back are they're kind of rockers basically, that's all they do. Okay, where's the one for the far end? Because there's no, one at one end. There you go. There's a little retaining screw at this end. Retaining screw? I suppose you call it a grub screw, which kind of pushes them all into place. But yeah, there's nothing that fixes them there at all, which is a bit odd. How weird. Out the back, out the top. Okay. Right, one of them is held by the screw, and that was that one there, so the rest are all pretty much independent. I'd have to reset them again anyway, having now moved them. So just looking at this, there's your there's your bridge piece. Let's match up. Screwdriver bit. Push that out of the way for a minute. There we go. Everything about this looks rock solid, I have to say. I wouldn't believe there's anything amiss in this. Feels like it's nicely located and anchored and everything, so we'll just see. This will need, it was clear from the beginning, this will need intonating. I don't think Daniel was happy with that, but yeah, everything about this looks really nicely seated. I can't really see anything about it that would be hampering the playing or the tone of this. I mean, the point about this being is that if the argument that says, well, you couldn't anchor this on this piece of wood, then you could apply the same logic and say, well, you couldn't use this piece of wood here. Well, wood is going to be no good. If that's got to be metal, then surely so is that. Okay, so what we've got in here is exactly what you'd expect to see. I'll give you a look. I don't know if you saw it there, Daniel. We've got a piece of shaped wood cut to size. What's this little bit here? That's just a little filler. So yeah, so we've got a piece of wood. You've got the bridge ground there, so the bridge touches that, which grounds the bridge. And we've got this little piece here. It probably comes out if you can be bothered to pull it out. I don't really want to. It's sitting beautifully flat in there. It's a nicely done little thing. It's even painted around the edge to kind of blend it in. And then underneath there we've got a block of wood that's gone in. Sorry, I hope you can see that. You've got a block of wood in there which blocks off the tremolo cavity. And this is, yeah, it's nice and level. It's kind of sitting where you'd expect it to sit. And I can gently wiggle it out. Okay, that's interesting. So we've got a little okay. We've got one block here that plugs in the tremolo spring space. We've got this is the body of the guitar. What's happened is there's a why, I'm not quite sure why, but this is just a little void space that he's packed with a little block just to make sure it doesn't sink down in there, and then this sits in there like that. There's nothing about this that worries me structure wise. It's nice hardwood. It's a couple of pieces I think glued together, but it's a nice hardwood. It's good. It's a good base for the screws to go in. Yeah, like I say, I really couldn't see much difference if that was. I'm going to put this down and oops, put this down just by two hands. Yeah, I can't see much of the way of difference if this was done in metal. Yeah. Nice. I mean, when the manufacturer, whoever it was, said you can't do it, it means you can't do it without modification. It's not going to work. All right, there's a little bit that came out of there, which can glue that back on, which I'll do now. That's just a little filler. Yeah. So, and there's your earth. I'll just do that. Glue that filler back on. Yeah, there's nothing, you couldn't really do it any better than that, short of making it out of steel, which wouldn't really do you anything other than just add a load of weight to the thing. Blob. There you go. Right, okay, so I'm just going to replace that and put the saddles back on. Excuse me. The thing that annoyed me most about these is they really do seem to that goes. I can't quite work out why there's slots in there and the strings don't come up through there on this. But yeah, they just basically they just sit in this space, which is odd. And the only thing that keeps them from tipping over is the fact they're packed in tightly together, which seems like a very weird thing to me. But there we go. So look, there it is. Sits in there like that. Sorry, sits in there like that. Nice and solid. Back go all the screws, and then we'll put those all back in. I couldn't remember. I had a look at one of these before, and I was convinced that the back grub screws had to do with the adjustment intonation, but apparently, basically, it looks like you have to adjust them loosely by hand, which I think is an absolute faff, and then lock them, so-called, by pushing this little, or tightening this little grub screw in the middle, and that's your lock. So I'm just making sure this is located correctly before I tighten anything up. And I'm using these two outside screws as the sort of start point. Once that's good, then I'll drop the other three in, which it is. But yeah, so it's a nice little seating. Honestly, don't think that's costing anything in terms of tone. I mean, just looking at this, I mean, the only thing you could do is, I suppose you could put something under here if you wanted to, but it's not really going to make much difference. Once this is tightened down, it's pretty good. I'm just looking at these screws. They're not the tightest grip I've ever noticed in a screw before. Right now there isn't an awful lot of grip. I'm just concerned about that. Do you know that? To me, it's holding nicely, but I'm wondering if that's missing a bit of downward force. They're just sitting there. In those holes, they're not dragging at this wood the way I'd like it to. Just a thought. That end one is, which is good. That's just a thought. And they're pulling this way, so it's not going anywhere. Just a thought. It's the timber is not holding those screws as well as I would like. That's my only criticism of it. I can't see that it's costing it anything much in terms of tone. Now, there's our end one. So they just basically sit there, and I can readjust these anytime I like anyway, so it's not really an issue. But we'll flatten them all out. So they appear to be the back one here, lifting that up, what will that do? Hang on a minute, let me just get this, wait a minute, let me just think this through. The string is meant to come up the back end of this and launch off the front, so why is it doing it that way? Why has that got the mark on that side? Is it coming up the side of this? I wonder, I wonder. Something interesting me about this, Daniel. I'm going to do a little bit of research, because something is making me wonder if this hasn't been on back to front, these saddles, the whole time. Just logically speaking, I would be wanting the slope. I'd be wanting the strings to come up the slope and off the top, looks like they've been put on the other way round, which means the strings just balance on, they don't use the slope in any way. They just come off there. I'm going to check it out. I'm just curious. I don't know the answer yet, but I will find out. It's just I'm leveling all of this out now so I can just make adjustments when we get everything back on. So it's flattening it out. And I'm going to see what any online research shows me about this thing. Everything about it would tell me to put the string coming up the slope and off the clear jump, and this apparently seemed to have been the wrong way round if that was the case, but I could be wrong, so I shall go and double check. And there goes my saddles. So yeah, you literally push them to wherever you want and then squeeze it. That's your lot. But actually you would end up wanting a pattern, a spread pattern like that, and then your squeeze would happen like this. Pressure, under pressure, dum 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 dum. It really is as simple as that. Nothing moves. There's no actual. It's bizarre. There's nothing actually holding it down. I can't quite believe that. And that slot is in the middle, so that's all there is to it. It's not locating in anything. How weird. Friction. Pressure holding them down, friction stopping them move. Okay. Just going to look at one thing. Where did I put the... Oh, I completely confused myself now. There they are. I'm going to get one of these off the thing. High E one. And I'm going to look and see where it rides up the ramp. Because if that's the case, I'm going to go that way with it. But what's going to make me question is, was it that way before? And I don't think it was that way, simply because the scuff mark on the side of the saddle suggests it was the other way, which would be very strange. You can see where the grub screw has gone into the side of the saddle, which it will do, and it will only, if it's been turned around at some point, you'll notice that it'll be kind of evident that it's you'll see the saddle will have it on both sides, but the fact that it's only on one side of any of these saddles suggests it's only ever been one saddle that's done the job. Okay, so let's just feel what happens here. So we get this thing. Do you know what? I think this has been the wrong way round. Common sense tells me that the ramp has to be at the back, although that would be more so if it was lower down, but it would be lower down if this was canted up. Why would you raise it up on both? Why would you raise it up on both legs? Can anybody tell me? Let's try it. So you raise up the back. Let's get a better one of these. You raise up the back. Sounds like a song. Da, 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 da. You raise up the back. What do you get? You increase, basically you lift that up, and what have we got? We've got not a very strong angle either which way. You raise this front one up, what do we get? Raise the front one up and we get, what do we get? Not worried the fact that it's moving. So maybe it doesn't make any difference either which way, but one is designed one way and one's designed the other way. So if we take this one down, I can't even do it without the whole lot moving. Take this one down by taking it out, it brings that angle down, or increases the angle, and that's weird. I'll do a little bit of research on this because I'm slightly perplexed about this. This appears to be not the one. Yeah, that I don't know if you can see, that one's got the scuff on where the grub screws constantly squeezed it, which suggests it's that way round. But this slope business suggests to me that if you want it, you would want the slope on the tuner side. So that's high up anyway, so there's not much of a break angle whatever way you cut or slice it. And that's the first thing. Is that right? Is that what's wrong here? But that can't change whichever way you do it. Wait a minute, what is going on here? I'm going to have a look at this. Okay, look, we've got, I'm going to take these out a minute. In this bridge we've got some slots. Okay, see them? Yeah, you can see them. Right, now you can see them. Okay, in this bridge we've got some slots that don't seem to do anything, which doesn't seem to make an awful lot of sense to me. Now, it would make sense if the string came up. These are staggered, so they represent the staggering of the thingies. If the string came up through this slot, it would make a lot of sense to come up the back of that slope and then off the top, and it would give you quite an extreme angle, break angle downwards. Maybe too extreme. No, it would be right. It would come up. That would give you quite a tight angle. That would put a lot of pressure on. The problem, what's worrying me, anyone who's watching, and Daniel, is the way this is currently configured. There's almost no downward pressure on this. No, that's what it needs to do. It needs to come up off the back of that slope and launch off the front point. And why? How can it do that if this is exactly the same height as that saddle? I'm missing something here. Something ain't right. What I'm wondering is if the change, or the thing that you don't like about the sound of it, is that there's not enough downward pressure on the front here. I mean, it's playing obviously, and there is some angle. You know, it's definitely going to put it under some degree of pressure, but it's not a lot. And it's back to front, and it's claiming to be this way around, which means if you kind of, let's assume it's standing up on its own 2 feet, leaning against its neighbour, which of course it never is actually. Well, sorry, it doesn't stand up on its own, it has to lean against its neighbour. But let's flatten it out for a minute and call it, right, there it is, leaning up against its neighbour. That running off to that end there, without lifting both of those up to a significant height, that is a really non-existent break angle. Can you see? And here's me just holding it in sort of position over the first fret. That, even with a load of tension on, that's not enough. Can you see what I'm doing? What you really should be looking for is that. But if you are, that's got to be the right way around anyway, because you need the string to be coming up the back of that slope, which is why it's got a slope there. That's what it feels to me to be the right thing. See it? Are we missing something under here that this should stand on that does that? I'm going to go and research. It's interesting. I don't know the answer, but I can see there's not a lot of break angle, and thereby that could have a huge impact on the sort of deadness of the tone coming off this thing. What I haven't managed to talk to Daniel about was about how much he played it with the tremolo on, because what's changed is a different tremolo, and I can, as far as I can see, what appears to be this appears not to be a big enough angle. If that were more like that, right, let's just joke, right? that were like that, obviously it's ridiculous, but that is a more more useful break angle. Obviously it's kind of way out of, this would have to be sunk deeper if there was something missing from there. But I'm interested in why it's such a shallow angle. Even if you lift this up to get a little bit of, you know, playing action, which we would do to about there, even with that, that's so minuscule. And anyway, it's the other way around according to the marks on the grub screw. So I'm going to go to do some research. I'll save you the boredom of this. I'll come back later. Quick check-in, so you know what I'm doing. I've got the radio on in the background, but I'm just re-cranning these frets after having done some investigation at the bridge end. And what I've discovered, astonishingly, is that these were on the wrong way round. So that may be robbing the thing of sustain. And the reason is that there's a slope on one side and a drop-off on the other side. And the slope should be on the tuner side and the drop-off should be facing the nut side, and it was the opposite way round. Now it's not a huge difference, but there is enough of a curl over on the top of the crown of this, that if it's the other way round, the string will just roll over and be slightly, I don't know what the word is, silenced, you know, robbed of its sustain. So I think that could well be what's been wrong about this, and I think it's ever since you've put this bridge on, Daniel, that they've been on the wrong way round. So I'm going to investigate that. The other thing is there's no real break angle on this guitar over the bridge, which again doesn't help, but it certainly won't help if this thing's the wrong way, the saddle's the wrong way around. Anyway, I'm going to get off, carry on doing this and listen to the radio. See you in a minute. Yeah, it's quiet now, no more radio, but yeah, I think that is what's happening, and I'll show you. Oh, can I? No, I've got this sticky tape all over it. I was going to say, in fact I will, I'll get rid of some of this. I shall show you of which I speak. Excuse me. So, what we have in these little saddles, let's see if I can give a cross section of it. Okay, so actually within the saddle we've got this thing, basically it goes up like that and then like that. Yeah, kind of. It's not exactly like that. It's more like a bit like that. And is it like that? No, it's more like that. Right, that's within the saddle. And if I'm looking very closely at this, I'm going to reshape this a little bit. Oh God, that's messy. Hello, fly. Actually, what it's really like is like that. That's a bit exaggerated, but, and I have to tell you that you need your string ideally to run up there and come off there like that. Okay, that's how a bridge should work. That should be the nut down there, and that should be the tuners on this headless thing, right? Now, I'm having taken the saddle apart, or the saddles out, what I noticed is they were all the other way round. Which means what was happening, let's redraw it, kind of. We changed things around, okay? So nuts at that end. We've got the same shaped object, okay? And this time we had the nut down this end, and we had the tuners at the back of the guitar down this end. Sorry, a bit close, but anyway, so the point is we had the string coming up here like this, hitting there, rolling over there. Can you see? And you've now got, instead of the string as it previously did coming off there and be clean and untouched over the drop, you now have it going the other way, so that this much of the string is rolling over a slight curve, which means your contact point is all of that. That is going to mess up the sustain completely. Okay, if the nut is at this end, because you're basically, it's like placing it on a flat surface, or that's curved, so it's not quite flat, but here, if this is behind the launch off point, then it's clean. Your contact point, it doesn't matter that it's there, it's about the launch point. Your string comes off there and starts at that point, and if it goes the other way, it sort of rolls off and eventually leaves about here, but it's got a fair bit kind of, I don't know how to describe it. There's a whole, it's funny to say why it should be different. It's mainly because the correct way rolls up and off, like I said, that's how it should be, not like that. Anyway, I know what I mean, but I saw it and I thought this is wrong, and then I went and did some research and I snapshotted the first 6 identical bridges, or had any bridges that had this unit in them, and every single one of the 6 that I snapshotted all had the drop-off section, this bit here, facing towards the nut, not towards the tuners, the opposite of how it was on this guitar. So I think that's going to make a substantial difference. It's a tiny change, but I can already sense how it's going to make a difference. It's a bit like if you cut a nut sometimes on a regular guitar and you don't cut the nut backwards, but you instead accidentally cut it flat. You suddenly lose the single point of pivot and it becomes a flat surface where the string all sits on the flat surface. And it sort of shares the load out and it deadens the sound of the string. So there you go. I think that's the problem. Along with lowering the frets, I think this is going to make it a very different guitar, leveling the frets. Okay, so what I've got now is I've got a pre-cut set of stuff, which I'm obviously going to sand down my 600 grit right down to 1500, followed by my micro mesh set. And I won't bore you with all this, so I'm going to come back when all that's done. But I think this is quite a simple thing now. I've got those 2 things. There is a bit of a concern on this, that the break angle over the bridge is really slight, and it's enough to make it play, but I think it should be more than that. But they've obviously designed it that way. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to wrap some tape around here as well, because I don't want anything of that plastic getting scuffed either. I'm going to get on off camera and polish all this out, and I'll come back to you when I've put the bridge back together again. I've polished these all out, and we're ready to restring with some new strings, and fingers crossed we're going to get a different kind of tone out of it, so I'm really excited to see in a bit. So okay. I have polished the frets, I have put the bridge back, the saddles back in, they're loose. I've turned them all around the correct way, and I've greased all the little grub screws so that we can get them up and down without them grinding and stripping these things, which is always a bad move. So what we have here is we have a set of eights for this guitar, and we're going to put these on. We're going to put it under load. We're going to see how that loads the neck, and we're going to see if that's going to need any tiny adjustment on the whatchamacallit, you know what I mean, the truss rod. Obviously this is going to be a different amount of loading, so I'm going to be really interested to see how it works, because it's a much lighter gauge than we've had on previously. So let's get these flattened. Oh, come on in this. Come on, in you go, sideways. Okay, now like I said, this bothers me somewhat, this arrangement here. it bugs me. What bugs me? The lack of what's that word? You know, brake angle over the top. Really, that's should be steeper. It should press harder down on the fulcrum, if that's the right word. You know, the top bit of the what's it. So I've got to put this one on here, put that one on there, pull it back, and here we go again. So that's that. Yeah, brake angle isn't good enough. It's not too bad actually looking at it, but it's not what I would have expected. So I'm going to see how this works once we've got the once we've raised it up to the correct playing action, which is going to give it a little bit more angle. There is enough there, you know, it works as we clearly saw before. Hello Morris, do you want to go on there? Hold on Morris. Hold on Morris, you can have it. Yeah, Morris, come on, you sit on there. Come on here. On here Morris, come on, it's yours. Anyway, yes, so we're gonna see how it all tightens up in a minute, but I'm kind of looking forward to this sustaining a little bit more. I think that the curved, the thing I showed on the board just now, I think that's going to have some impact on this double ball system. Again, this like any guitar will need the string stretching out, but the only downside of this is we can't afford to break one of these, which is a bit of a booger, and particularly we're working with an 8, since they're double-ended ball strings. You're going to have to be very careful. In fact, I may, Daniel, I may give you these back somewhat unstretched, which is not like me, but as I say, with specialist strings and with no spares, I don't really have much of a choice, unfortunately. Can't afford to break one. Anyway, so I'm going to just load these up and then put them under pressure, but before I get too much pressure on, I get to basically set the playing action on these saddles, all facing the right way with the slope pointing towards the tuners. And there you go, out you go. It is an easy system, and there's no doubt about that. I do like it. If I had a bit of spare money for my next build, I might consider actually just buying one of these instead of fighting with the Chinese horrors, because they really aren't up to much when all said and done. I mean, they work and they keep the price down, but this is a much more dependable, reassuring build. Having said that, I haven't tried the Chinese kind of version of this. It's called Overlord of Music. It's got the most ridiculous so-called brand names, and it pretends to have some sort of licensing involved in it, and of course it's probably just ripped off from Steinberg. But it seems to do the trick. It does actually work. It's quite good in that respect. But I don't know if they make one without the tremolo, and you have to dismantle the tremolo and do some messing about to get it to work. Okay, so here we are, restrunglified, bit tightening. Now these are on the 9, so we're not going to get the same pull on the truss rod, but I suspect with the precision leveling we've done, we should be all right. So first thing is we're going to go back into physical action setting mode, since I've taken all of that apart and we've lost all the reference points for action that we had. I'd need them a bit tight, just enough to sit where they should sit. Now these may well be already kind of sat near the place. Right, that's just about one, so this has to come up a bit. Now with this, there's two sets of these thingies, and I'm not really sure. I think doing the front one up on its own probably increases that angle a bit better. I think that's probably a better option. And we're dead on 1.5. Hey, stop where we are. So I'm going to do the same with this one. Oh no, go inwards, you fool. Hit the deck, push forwards. Just under 1.5, that looks good to me. Next one. Up it comes. Yeah, the brake angle is not too bad now. I've got this the right way around actually. You can see it's improved. Oh, this should be quite some improvement actually. I'm just fingers crossed. Oh, fingers crossed. Okay, that's halfway. A bit more on the other ones. Next one. Up we go. Just over one, down a tiny bit. It's looking good, feeling good. Now I've guessed the intonation, as you remember, because it's a bit clumsy, this intonation business on here. So we're going to have to try it, test it when all's said and done, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Okay. I think that will do me for now. Now we get some tightening going on. Morris is tucked up nicely in his thing. Ha! On the ball. Ah! What's that doing? Hey? That's not supposed to be like that. Oh, that's a bit lousy. That shouldn't be doing that. Oh, these aren't good at all. Hang on a minute, I'm going to have to try and reverse this. That isn't good. Mind you, don't tell me they're actually different. They can't be different. And let's just redo this. One of them's got too much windings at the end, thank goodness. The other one's got a shorter amount. I'm going to switch it around. That's not good, because otherwise that was going to put the windings over the fret, which was going to be an absolute disaster. Thank God for that. For you. Now, I don't know, that's a new one on me, not having owned this guitar, this kind of guitar. I really was caught out by that. Now the question is under this very light loading, what's happening with the truss rod? Because if there isn't enough, I might be, it's almost flat. we've got to adjust this a little bit. It's not ideal to have it so flat. That's just good. It's just because we've got the 9s on and they're not, sorry, the 8s. So I'm just going to take a tiny bit of counter pressure off that. Now with this, I suppose I could do a bit of stretching. It frightens the life out of me to do it. I'll try, and I'll try and be gentle. It's against my religion not to do some. Then I think we're kind of done for the night. Oh, the intonation, that's the only other thing. I think the intonation I would actually probably end up doing it by tapping them backwards and forwards. I can't see any other logical way of doing it. Come on, gently, gently. Eights I'm not sure about on this. If I don't think these are going to work, Daniel, I may revert to the 9s. It's a little bit on the low side. Excuse me. Right, let's double check these. Tiny tweaks. Still a fraction low. clean sounding compared to what it was. Alright, we're nearly done. While I'm here, let's do the intonation. It's not rocket science. We can do it. We just need the thing and the thing, and put it on the strap. You do it that way, and then it's done. And I think this is a pretty good outcome, actually. Getting wise to the wrong way round saddles is important, significant. I think that's picked up that extra bit of resonance. Personally, the 8s are a little bit wiry for me, but see how you get on with them, Daniel. And if you don't like it, I suspect you can comfortably go to switch out with 9s without really worrying about the truss rod. I did the absolute tiniest tweak on the truss rod. Okay, so standard thing applies. Tune to our halfway mark, or our 12th fret harmonic. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Good guess, good guess. Typical. Okay, it's got to get back. So, too short on the D. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to get my little drifty thing, and I'm going to drift it back a tad. It's not attached to anything. I don't want to undo these because I don't want them to move elsewhere. So let's just see if a gentle drift on the D works. That's good. Gentle drift on the A and gentle drift on the E. Let's see what happens there. Really subtle, isn't it? Sophisticated. Subtle and sophisticated. It does the job. It's like a snake, this bloody cable. fractionally too far forward on the D. Oh yeah, so subtle. Thing. What the holy hoopla is going on here? Would this be a bridge? Just double check that. Yeah, look at that. I'll have to shift that, isn't it? Oh, listen to the sustain on that. Oh, come on, Daniel. I need you to listen. Forget the, not amplified, you like it acoustic, don't you? Check this out. Go on. I think that's regained some, hasn't it? Still losing a bit of tuning because it's fresh strings, but I'm too frightened to do too much more with them, as I've mentioned. Don't want to break them and be having to get another set from somewhere. So it's pulling some slack there each time I grab these strings still. But as I say, I'm going to leave you do the bulk of that. This thing is telling me it needs a fraction more relief. I'm not sure the 8s are strong enough to pull it. That's the problem. I hate to say it's sorry, the 9s were better at this. don't know if this is a two-way truss rod, but I've just taken a little bit more. That's done it. That's it, we're on. Phew, as they say in Wales. Phew. Alright, we're done. That's brilliant. Just a little bit of playing around there with the truss rod because of these 8s, but once you get it right, it's right, and I'm happy with that. So give this little thing a dust off, and then we're done for the night. And that's 2 out of 3 successfully done, which I'm really pleased about. Obviously, I'll revisit them tomorrow and just make sure they're all still happy, and that this truss rod hasn't adjusted itself any more overnight as it settles or whatever. But I just wasn't sure that these 8 strings were going to pull enough relief into the neck, really, and I'm not sure if this has got a double action truss rod. It feels like it's hit the middle point or the slack point that I just got to there, but as it happens, it's worked out fine because that's just got enough. There was the D was just beginning to windmill or sitar because the relief was too low. But that tiny little bit of extra relief, and the Carvin is going home in its box. You're going home in a box. You're going home in a box. There you go, Carvin. Thank you very much. Good evening, good morning, and good nighty. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is 2 out of 3.